All right, whatever. Welcome to the Vivisection. This is Zane Simon here for Bellator 165, joined by Eddie Mercado and Victor Rodriguez, as always, for these Bellator events. We are looking at mostly the main card for this Michael Chandler versus Ben Henderson title fight. Few prelims on this, and it's kind of I know Bellator throws a lot of huge fight cards, but is it just me, or is this card like especially long?
Yeah, it's like 17 fights.
Yeah. They could put like 3 promotions in this thing. I don't understand, but whatever, that's what they're doing. I don't know if all these fights I doubt all these fights are going to end up even broadcasting on their live streaming service. They'll probably be like a few dark bouts, a prelim or the prelim card, and then a post-lim card, I gotta imagine.
Yeah. There are probably a few post-lim cards.
Yeah. So main card for this, it's pretty fun looking, honestly. Looks like a solid main card for this one. Vic, what are your thoughts on this card?
Overall, I like it. Another one of these San Jose classics that we've come to expect from Coker and Company. Has pretty much all the makings of what kind of leaning more into the direction of what Coker and Company have tried to make Bellator. Some of the bigger names are going to be on this card, some interesting faces for the future, and some fun local fighters to really kind of round this out. So yeah, this it's not stylistically. There's a couple of interesting bouts here as well. So there definitely should be a little bit of everything here on this outside of crazy heavyweight fights.
So before we get to the main card, and we only have odds for the main event right now, unfortunately. I was hoping that there'd be a few more early, Bellator, some of these odds have been coming out a little earlier for them, but whatever. But before we jump into the main card, I want to talk about a couple of prelim fighters. And maybe the fights are in as well, but mostly just the fighters. First and foremost, obviously, is Baby Slice, who is set to make his delayed debut on this card. Eddie, have you excited for the Baby Slice debut?
I'm still curious as to why it's on the prelims. I mean, isn't that a draw that you know? I mean, maybe because his father came to fame on the internet, so they wanted to do the same with him. I mean, I'm not exactly sure why they're doing that, but hopefully his opponent makes weight and he'll fight finally.
That's low, but yes, maybe that is why. I think, somebody else was asking about this for one of their last cards. I can't remember. Oh, they had a couple of like national championship level wrestlers or NCAA wrestlers making their debuts on their last card.
Yes.
And somebody was like, why aren't these dudes on the main card? These guys are important prospects. And it's just, I think it's a little bit wise to not put 0-0 fighters on your main card, no matter how much interest there might be in them. Because you never
CM Punk.
Yes. Like you can always, Bellator can always tape delay an awesome prelim fight and stick it in the main card if they've got a break.
Yeah.
And otherwise, you don't risk just putting on the lowest level of trash fight in front of people, in front of your larger viewer audience. Although I got to say, at that point, Kerry Melendez 0-0 versus Sheila Padilla, which I'm sure everybody's got to say that name. She probably grew up with everybody pronouncing that name wrong, so I feel for her.
I actually had a Spanish teacher named Mr. Padilla, so that's one I will get right. I will get
but
right.
But especially with the first name of Sheila, everybody wanted to be like Sheila Padilla. Like, you just know that was every day of her life. So I feel for her a little.
But back to why some of these prospects are buried in the prelims is in case they don't do so hot.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, there's a good chance that they might not, be ready for such a stage. So
I'll be interested. I think, I'm sure if Kevin Ferguson Jr. just absolutely blows this dude out of the water, that fight will probably make the main card broadcast in some way, highlights, whatever.
I mean,
Um,
Spike owns. I mean, it's their promotion and their network. What are they gonna, were they gonna cut it short because they got to fit in those last 15 minutes of another cops rerun? Like it doesn't. They have that benefit. So in that case, yeah, you're absolutely right. They could totally do that.
Otherwise, on the prelim card, Carrington Banks versus Jake Roberts. I'm surprised and interested to see Banks here. He was on the tough Black Zillions versus ATT season. Looked like a pretty good wrestler. Undefeated, 5-0. Obviously, he didn't. I don't think he necessarily shined on Tough, but Tough. I kind of think of Tough as a terrible measuring stick for seeing how good guys are going to look in a promotion. Ah, shit.
So yeah, Tough. The Black
Hey,
Zillions. I
I
mean, it's
know.
definitely hard to thrive in the house. Some people actually prefer it. I was talking to Amanda Bobby Cooper, and she was on Tough 23, and she said she actually enjoyed it because it gave her a chance to really remove herself from her support system, kind of, and make her really, come to terms with whether or not like this is for her. Like, is it is she a hard worker when no one's looking? And she found out she was. So, I mean, it can really be a growing experience on the show. But, it also kind of speaks to, are you good at short notice fights? Then, that show's for you. If not, then
And that was a pretty great interview. What I don't think what I don't think really comes up in a lot of these cases, and I don't actually remember if that came up when you spoke to Cooper, but it's some fighters could be really good, probably better than everybody else, but they're not good at the short notice weight cuts, the repeated weight cuts in a short period of time. The preparation gets a little weird. You're not with the same crew. So I mean, and I think Zane, I think I heard this from you, that it's not always the best fighters that rise. In the Ultimate Fighter, but rather those that are better suited to survive the conditions of the program and the format. But
Well, and
hey,
more
listen,
than
you
that,
do what you can.
yeah, more than that, it's also a place where fighters tend to revert. Like people rely really heavily on what they're already good at. So, a wrestler who's been spending a lot of time working on his boxing and who's shown that outside of Tough, they may come into Tough and just be the most boring, grinding, ugly wrestler out there because that's, they got to go back to what they know because they don't have coaches around to give them that confidence. They don't have a full camp to be like, oh no, I just spent months working on this so I can do it. So
And not only that, but it's not easy to project where guys can go from there.
yeah,
You look at some of these tough Brazil guys, the tough Mexico guys, looking a hell of a lot better than they did on the show, and some folks that you might expect that you'd think that guy's going to be a future champion. You never
Yep.
really can predict.
So I'm surprised to see Carrington Banks there. Looks like he's got a good fight in front of him here on Bellator against another undefeated dude. So that should be fun. And then also a bit of a surprise to me is, and maybe I just missed this, is she already fought for them before?
No.
No. Is it Sarah D'Alelio is on this Bellator card? It's been it hasn't been that long since she competed against Andrea Lee in Invicta and won. And then she was on a Super Fight League US card, and now she's in Bellator. So I don't know. I mean, I guess she's kind of bounced around. She had a run with Invicta, and then since then she's bounced around. I guess it just seems like she's just maybe going on one bout contracts or something.
Yeah, she's had a bit of a drought, like between one fight and the next, pretty long periods of time. I mean, I remember when she lost to Evinger back in Invicta, she went over to Pancrase and she did, she's doing like one-offs basically in a few of these other organizations, as you mentioned. But, hey, look, maybe she finds a home here. I hope they treat her well.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. She's fighting somebody I've never heard of, Jamie Nivara, who's 4-1. So
yeah.
And who's fought for Bellator before. So
yes.
Nothing. If nothing else, there's at least that. That's pretty much all there is of note to me on this undercard. There are a lot of untested fighters, some guys that might be good, some guys that, have flashy records, 5-0 Don Muhammad versus 6-1 Dwight Grant, stuff like that, but nothing else too exciting. Although also, was Nick Pico one of their wrestling, or is that
Aaron
Aaron
Pico.
Pico? That's Aaron Pico.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, it's like, why does that name look familiar? No, different dude.
Yeah.
Anyway, card now. First main card bout of the night. Adam Piccolotti versus Brandon Gertz. What are your thoughts on this, Eddie?
I am definitely excited for this fight. I had a chance to speak with Brandon Gertz ahead of this, and he is training with Pat Barry, Rose Namajunas, Justin Gaethje. I mean, he has a pretty decent squad, and he's killing it in Bellator, man. He's 6-2. Since his first fight with Derek Campos, he really kind of came into his own. I mean, he's just smoking people. He put Melvin on his back, handled him, and he's coming off like a 30-second knockout of Derek Campos.
Yeah, he avenged that loss, which is always great.
I mean, I like him. He's never been taken down. He's got knockout power. He's explosive. I mean, I don't know. I like him, and I really think he might be on his way to a title shot. Adam Piccolotti, he's pretty good in his own right. Submission specialist. He's 8-0, undefeated, 4-0 in Bellator. A lot of rear naked chokes. Really good ground and pound, like high volume ground and pound, and he uses it to set up transitions, to set up submissions, which I like. He also has a wrestling background, so he is pretty damn good as far as grappling goes. But I'm real curious as to what will happen if he can't get the takedown and he's forced to stand with Brandon Gertz. Because, I mean, outside of what's his name? Derek Anderson, I mean, Gertz has been on fire. So I think Piccolotti still kind of has that he's just not polished enough on his feet, I don't think. And although he's pretty damn good, and I think he has a pretty high ceiling, I think this is a gigantic step up in competition, and I don't see him making it out of this one. So I'm gonna take Brandon Gertz, and I think he'll get a TKO finish, probably in the first.
All right, Vic, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I got to largely agree with Eddie here on this one. Gertz is overall, he's 14-4 with 8 submissions and 2 TKOs. He's been making a bit of a statement lately because he's on a 3-fight win streak, and he's been looking pretty damn good in these fights. Think what you will of Melvin Guillard. These days, the way he handled that fight and the way he pretty much dominated good stretches of it, pretty much an indicator of what his style can do. And he's going to be fighting a guy who's largely a jiu-jitsu specialist. All of his wins have been, he likes to, he certainly likes to hunt for the finish. What I do find a bit concerning here is the Piccolotti is 5'11", whereas Brandon Gertz is 5'7". I doubt that's going to be too much of a problem, given that Gertz has dealt with longer and rangier strikers in the past. And not only that, he's dealt with better strikers than Piccolotti. Not a knock on him. It's just that there's a different level of opposition. And so that being considered, I really have to favor Gertz. It's not going to go to the ground unless he wants it to, given his wrestling defense and offense. And I don't really think he's going to be reckless enough to try to take it to the ground if he doesn't have to and get caught up in some kind of complicated setup that leads to him getting dominated with someone as a backpack and eventually a submission. So I'm going to have to go with Gertz on this.
All right, that brings us to the second main card bout, light heavyweight fight between Linton Vassell and Francis Carmont. Vic, what are your thoughts on this?
Well, this is just such a really strange one because Francis Carmont, prior to arriving in the UFC, had a reputation for being a finisher. I mean, he was a guy who was pretty much seen as a terror on the Canadian circuit, and everywhere he fought, he had been out there making statements. Currently 25-11, 3-1 since he arrived in Bellator. Basically, that lone loss doesn't look that bad in retrospect because it's to the now light heavyweight champion Phil Davis. Ended up with a submission over Lucas Klinger. I mean, he hasn't looked that great, but he's kind of adopting that Czech Congo smothering plan. He's just ready to not just blanket a guy on the ground, but just clinch and hold and make the guy carry the weight, break them down standing, and then hunt for whatever's available from there. I don't expect anything too flashy from him. Whereas Vassal is a little more versatile when it comes to his submission game and when it comes to his striking as well. I mean, he's been alternating wins and losses as of late. You know, he's got submission win over Zwicker, submission loss against Newton, then eventually, you know, he's had like these. It's not that his performances necessarily are inconsistent. It's rather that I guess it's the kind of opposition that he's facing. I think his ceiling has pretty much been established at this point. That being said, I don't know if he's going to be able to deal with Carmont's pressure and if he's over the long run going to be able to just, you know, fight him off to the point where he's going to be able to implement his game and use his strengths to win. So unfortunately, we're not going to see anything too exciting here. I'm pretty much seeing Carmont, you know, dragging him to the ground after an ugly, protracted standing battle, and then from there on in, probably just grinding his way to a decision.
All right, Eddie, your thoughts?
This is a weird one for sure. Definitely weird. Carmont's weird. I mean, it's really hard to get a beat on the dude. He went 6-3 in the UFC. Like, it's weird. Like, he had 3 straight wins: Jacare, CB Dalloway, Talis Leites. Or no, wait, those were 3 straight losses.
Yeah.
And he got knocked out by Talis Leites. And then he got knocked out by Phil Davis.
Yeah.
And it's like he's getting knocked out by people that he shouldn't be getting knocked out, like by guys who don't knock people out. Like grapplers. Grapplers are what gives him fits. I mean, I don't think Carmont really wants to grapple. I don't. I think he wants to stand. I think he's going to try to stay at range like he does, kind of hang back, you know, a real low volume kind of game, maybe land a leg kick when it's there, and try to make Vassal stand with him, because Vassal's pretty damn good on the ground. I mean, he can definitely – I mean, yeah, he got choked out by Emmanuel Newton, but that was, you know, like a Hail Mary submission. You know, he was dominating Emmanuel Newton. So, I don't know. Vassal's stand-up, though, is really interesting. It's like he's long and rangy and has really good body kicks, like really excellent kicks to the liver, but they're naked. He'll throw just one of them and then maybe one again. And then, you know, 2 minutes later, he might throw another one. So he doesn't really build off of it. He doesn't really set it up, but it's usually open when it is there, when he does pull the trigger on it. And he kind of has the jiu-jitsu stand-up. You know, like the longer the fight goes, the more his fundamentals deteriorate. The less likely he is to bring his hands back to his face. But I just can't trust Carmont to not end up in some scramble and end up on the ground, where I think Vassal's going to have the edge. So I'm going to go with Linton Vassal here. I think he will. I think he's going to grind on Carmont and get the decision win.
Yeah, I think one of the things that may be going on with Carmont, honestly, is that he's such an imposing athlete, an imposing physical fighter, that a lot of guys just kind of get scared off by him, especially because he can be a real grinder if he gets a hold of you. And the problem it tends to be that when he meets an athletic grappler, somebody who can really compete on the ground and expects to be able to compete on the ground, then people find out, like, then he actually has to do something with that athleticism, and he's never actually been all that great at that. Like, his striking's not bad when he can pot shot from way outside and you're really scared to engage him. But for dudes who've just been willing to go after him, like Talis Leites was willing to do, like Jacare and like Phil Davis, who just are like, shit, I don't have any problem going after you and trying to and letting you see if you can hang with me on the ground, then Carmont suddenly runs out of options really quick. So that'll be interesting to see in this, because I do think Linton Vassal will go after him, but Linton Vassal isn't also, like, he's big, but he's also not the most athletic dude in the world. Like, he's really kind of stiff and
a little awkward, like that tall guy awkward.
Yeah.
But he's got a chin. He has a hell of a chin.
He has a hell of a chin. And yeah, I'm kind of feel like it'll be interesting because if Carmont can't just positionally grind and dominate Vassal on the ground, I feel like Vassal's going to be the guy working harder, trying to do more.
But when have we ever seen Vassal get dominated on the ground? Like, he's always competitive, always scrambling.
Yeah, I mean Phil Davis.
Well, that's, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Francis Carmont is not Phil Davis.
No.
So.
No.
Who do you think the favorite's going to be in this one?
That's hard to say. I'm kind of expecting it to maybe be Vassal, maybe, but that's not based off anything. Honestly, I think this should be a pretty close, damn close fight.
I definitely can't see Carmont getting the finish. I definitely don't see him submitting him, and if Mo didn't put Vassal away, it's really tough for me to see Carmont putting him away. I mean,
yeah, I mean, the trouble for both of them is that at their best, they're both submission finishers, and they're both guys who tend not to get submitted.
Yeah, and Mo's not a submission hunter either. So, I mean, that's kind of like, well, I do understand the point you're making, and it's not an invalid point, but by any means, it's not the same, like, the comparison probably doesn't fit in this situation.
Wait, what comparison?
Oh, how King Mo wiped the floor with them in that first round of their fight? And Vassal was tough enough to hang around, so I think he's tough enough to not get finished on the feet by Carmont.
Well, yeah. I mean, Francis Carmont isn't a more dangerous striker than King Mo, certainly. All right. We actually need to roll it back, though, to the first fight on the card. I skipped over it because I saw the 0-0 and 2-0 unranked, and my brain was just like, not a main card fight. Skip. Kerry Melendez versus Sheila Padilla. Eddie, what are your thoughts on this fight?
Is that even on the main card?
Yeah, that's the opener for the main card.
Oh. Honestly, I couldn't tell you. I don't know much about either of these people. I did zero research on either of them. So I'm going to pick Sheila Padilla because it's fun to say. By submission.
Kerry Melendez is Gilbert Melendez's wife and pretty good kickboxer.
Yes. I changed my pick.
All right. Yeah, that's why she's on the main card. It's a bit of a, she's
over Kimbo's
kind of trying to showcase. All right, Vic, what are your thoughts? What is your hopefully more researched opinion?
Okay, I'll tell you what. This will be Melendez's MMA debut. We've seen her do kickboxing before. Just very briefly, look, I train with a couple of guys, a couple of black belts, and they have their wives train, and they catch on real quick, and they start moving up. And if you think that there's any degree of favoritism or anything like that, you get out on the mat, and you'll see what's going to happen. You're going to get schooled quickly. So, there is something about being married to a professional fighter and being in that gym and having that space as their relationship pretty much is from all indications. She's in there with Gilbert. And they are, it has to rub off. You know what I'm saying? So even though we've only seen her kickboxing, I'm pretty sure she's definitely not being a slouch when it comes to grappling. And if she took a fight and she's going to start doing MMA, she's definitely not going to do something where she wouldn't be taking it seriously. Now, we have seen Padilla's been around on the regional circuit out west. She's 2-0. Very, very scrappy fighter. Very much, cling on to the opponent, climb up on him like a koala, and see what works from there. She takes a lot of damage. I mean, she's able to take it, but unfortunately, she's also very willing to take it. And that becomes a problem because eventually, you run into somebody like, someone who's a professional kickboxer like Melendez, and you're going to probably start running into trouble. Padilla's ground game is pretty much the bread and butter here. Not sure how that's going to serve her. I don't think she's particularly as physically imposing to be too much of a threat. One thing to note about Melendez and her kickboxing record, there was that one Dynamite show where she fought. I don't remember the young lady's name, and I'm a little
Hadley Griffith.
Hadley Griffith, whose record neither in MMA nor in kickboxing was necessarily impressive. Yeah, I mean, her body of work, maybe she hasn't fought world beaters. She's not. This isn't a Tiffany Van Soest coming in and trying to, translate a certain set of skills after beating high level opposition, world class opposition in another sport. So that's not to put her down in any way. All I'm saying is we probably need to downplay some of the hype and see where she goes from here. It's nice that she's getting someone who's only 2-0. I didn't find any amateur fights for Padilla, so probably not that much experience outside of that. And, let's see what happens. But stylistically, it could be fun. The worst we could get is a sloppy grappling match. And even if that's the case, it is what it is. That's just the way sport goes.
Should be noted, too, Melendez will have 5 inches of height on Padilla, apparently.
Yeah.
So Padilla is only 5'1". She would be short by strawweight standards.
Yes.
All right. Now we're going to move on to the co-main event. Michael Page violence. He's fighting Fernando Gonzalez in a fight they have tried to book like 50 billion times now. Finally happening, unless somebody misses weight or dies or something like that. Vic, what are your thoughts on this fight?
I don't even know if this is going to happen. I think this is going to be Bellator's Jorge Rivera versus Alessio Sakara fight, which I'm still convinced that they're the same person, and that's why they never fought. They booked that motherfucker like 6 times in a row, and the shit never happened. But, okay, fine. Outside of that, man, listen, we've all been impressed with Michael Page, and rightfully so. I mean, the guy really is all that for what he's shown. Granted, he hasn't fought an NCAA caliber wrestler. He hasn't fought, these jiu-jitsu wonders that happen to come into mixed martial arts. And that's fine. I don't really have as much of a problem with the fact that he's fighting guys that are mostly strikers and that are mostly wrestle boxers that like to stand. I think we've all, and I think we have an agreement among all three of us that we would like to see him fight better opposition a while ago. Maybe they were bringing him along a little too slow.
I honestly don't feel that way, but I'm pretty alone on that.
Oh, okay. All right. I mean, there was a bit of a regression from when he eventually fought Rudy Bears, I believe. And there was a bit of a weird period there, but this is probably the right time for him to fight someone like Gonzalez. And Gonzalez is largely a Team Quest guy. Ridiculous strength. I mean, this guy puts people down with that left hand, and it's interesting to see because his attitude is very laid back. He likes to connect with counters. He likes to pretty much, work with very crafty angles, and not necessarily the most, not the fastest guy, not the most agile, but definitely very strong. And he does have a very good sense of timing. How that's going to work against somebody who's probably got the best sense of timing that we've seen in Bellator, I'm not sure how that's going to work. While I don't expect this to go the way some of his other highlight reel finishes have gone, I do think that Michael Page will probably end up winning this by battering Fernandez's legs and then working from the outside and then eventually getting a finish that way. I think he's going to have to be very methodical for that. Gonzalez is not really going to start working for takedowns or anything like that unless he really feels like he has to later on in the fight or if the opportunity presents itself. But yeah, I'm kind of seeing it that way. Barring some kind of weird flash knockout from Gonzalez, which is very, very possible, I don't really see him winning this fight. And it kind of saddens me because the guy's actually pretty cool.
All right, Eddie, what's your pick?
I think this is going to be a lot closer than people think, and I think we're going to find out a lot about Michael Page here. Of course, Michael Page is a sniper. He likes to play the outside and make you make mistakes and catch you coming in, and he's great at it. I mean, he is absolutely phenomenal at it. Such a joy to watch. And he's winning in various ways. Like, it's always different. He caught an Achilles lock, like what? That whole fight was just crazy the way it happened. So, I mean, it makes you wonder, like, what kind of grappling skills does he actually have? But then he fights Cyborg, and Cyborg held him down for the whole first round pretty much. And Page had nothing for that. Absolutely nothing. And it's not like Cyborg, like, yeah, okay, he's a black belt in jiu-jitsu, but, he's not known for his top game. So, I mean, I really got to question Page's ability to work from his back, whether it be sweeps, submissions, or getting back to his feet. I think that's a huge concern. Now, Gonzalez, on the other hand, deceptive record, 5-0 in Bellator, but 25-13 overall. Plus, he lost a glory kickboxing bout to Paul Daly not too long ago. But he's been on a tear in Bellator. He knocked out Caro Parisian. He choked out Zane's boy, Curtis Millender. And that fight was actually interesting because Millender is tall, is real tall, real athletic. And Gonzalez came out spamming his left hand, like double overhand left hands, which was interesting to see, and interesting to see how fast they were. They were actually reasonably fast. Nowhere on the level of Michael Page, though. So that's what you got to wonder here. Can Gonzalez, what is he going to do about the speed? Because his footwork isn't exactly, he's not that agile. He isn't exactly moving around the ring that much. So is he going to be able to cut the cage off? Might not be, but on the same token, he's very technically savvy with his stand-up. He keeps his hands up, he rolls with punches, and he counters. He will return fire. You land a punch, he will eat it on his hands and return fire. And that makes me wonder if Michael Page's, one-off sniper style will work against someone like that who's not afraid to get hit and who can actually, defend one strike coming at a time and willing to return a couple punches. I don't know. We're going to see a lot. We're going to see if Page can adjust. Is Page a contender? Is he for real? Is the hype real? Does he have fundamentals that he can fall back on if the flashy shit doesn't work? Like, can he sit there, work a jab leg kick, jab high kick? Is that in his repertoire, or is it just all flash? Because if it's just all flash, I'm going Fernando Gonzalez here. I think he'll make it too ugly, and I think Page will learn a valuable lesson. I'm gonna take him. I'm gonna go Fernando Gonzalez here. I think he'll probably win by decision. I think he'll make it ugly enough on the feet to get a hold of Page and just get it to the ground somehow. So I'm gonna go Gonzalez. Upset.
Yeah, it's an interesting fight because Gonzalez has kind of hammered out a career out of being the toughest dude in the cage. And he's been doing it long enough now that he's actually a pretty technical fighter. A reasonably technical boxer, I should say. This is somebody that started back in 2003 when Fernando Gonzalez started, 13 years ago. And it was all King of the Cage and, Gladiator Challenge and just these crap fights all over, wherever, fought in the WEC, in Strikeforce. And over time, you do it long enough, you fight long enough, you get in shape, your boxing gets good, your timing, your cage craft gets to be pretty good. And Fernando Gonzalez, and he's got the head for it, so he's turned into a pretty decent fighter over the long term. It's the kind of thing where, like, if he didn't have as thick a skull as he does, there's no way that he could fight the way he has for as long as he has. But that's going to be an interesting question against Page because it does mean Gonzalez is going to wade right in and be willing to eat shots. And it's hard to say how many of those he can eat without getting knocked out against Michael Page. Michael Page, I mean, you got that kind of speed and timing. Even dudes with great chins go down. But the flip side of that here is too, one of the things that's I think doesn't get talked about enough with Page is that not only are his fundamentals not that great, they've never looked that great when he's had to use them, but his defensive footwork is not very good either. When people have pressured him, he's fallen into the cage pretty quickly. There's a reason that he had to hit a heel hook in one of his most recent fights. And it's going to be interesting to see him getting pressured by Gonzalez because Gonzalez is almost certainly going to try to pressure him. So, and
he's still fresh. Like Gonzalez, he's had a lot of fights, but he's still pretty damn fresh. He's in his prime.
It's all honestly, it's all skull thickness. I mean, that's the only reason. There's no reason for a 33-year-old who's been fighting for 13 years to be in his prime, but it's still working for him. So but I like how Page has been brought along, because frankly, if he doesn't beat Fernando Gonzalez, like, this is a hype test. This is the kind of fight that he can absolutely lose, and if his game isn't developed enough, if he can't knock Gonzalez out, he could very easily lose it. And it's also the kind of fight that top championship level fighters should not be losing. So
the litmus test.
Yep. It's only Page's 12th pro bout, and he's only been fighting for 4 years. So it's time for him to take that step, see if he's ready to become a real serious top contender type talent in the world.
And on the flip side of that, if Gonzalez wins, then he should be considered for a title shot.
Yeah, he might as well. I mean, they'll probably make him rematch Page, just because that's what Bellator likes to do when their boy loses.
Caldwell, Ty Manglo too? What?
Yeah, why not? All right. I guess I'm picking Page here because I think that Gonzalez is going to walk into too many shots, but he better hope that Gonzalez goes down, because if Gonzalez doesn't, then Page is going to have to show a much better game than he has in the past.
Yeah, Gonzalez isn't going anywhere. He'll be just as angry as he is in the first round. So, but here's the real question. How insane are these odds going to be?
Yeah, that's true. There are no odds for this yet, and I assume when they come out, Page is going to be a massive favorite, which means that if Page is anywhere over like 3 or 300, I would say, if he's anywhere over 300, you might bet on Gonzalez,
yeah, for sure. Because that means you're getting Gonzalez for like at least plus 250.
Exactly.
At least, which is, my friend will bet on that.
Yes. All right, that brings us to our main event. Michael Chandler, Benson Henderson. Let's see, where am I? Eddie, talk me through it.
Very excited for this fight. Michael Chandler is just a savage. He's an absolute savage, but one of the most humble guys you will ever talk to. And, man, he is just killing people. He is sleeping fools. What he did to Patricky Pitbull was just absolutely incredible. Like, he knocked him into the second grade. Like, that was absolutely phenomenal. And it's nothing new. Like, he's always had the power. He's always had the power to do that. He's got the wrestling to complement that. The knock on him, though, are, his cardio has been in question sometimes because he starts so aggressively and so hard that, he tends to fade as the fight goes on. And his fundamentals can sometimes also deteriorate as the fight goes on. But, man, he's freaking good. And Benson Henderson, former UFC lightweight champion, he's freaking good as well. So this is very interesting, and it's been really hard to get a beat on Benson Henderson lately. It's kind of hard to see where he's falling. I mean, was he losing that Pitbull fight until Pitbull broke his leg? I think so, So I'm not sure. Is Benson Henderson done? He can't be, right? Like, he's only 32. Like, he can't be done.
10 years.
Yeah, 30 fights.
Most fighters fall is about the 10-year mark. I mean,
yeah. I don't know. That Pitbull fight it really, seeing him fight someone shorter, the Koreshkov, I was like, I can make excuses for that. Koreshkov is huge. Koreshkov is fucking good. He had, trouble. He couldn't get a single takedown. He was just eating knees left and right. But then he fights Pitbull, who was significantly smaller, and still he completely changed his game. He pressured Pitbull, but he really wasn't doing any damage. And I'm just kind of curious as to how he's going to approach a Michael Chandler fight. I feel like he should kind of like, is he going to try to grapple early and try to tire Chandler out and take him into deep waters? Or is he going to play the outside like the old Benson Henderson and kind of throw those funky oblique kicks and, kind of what he did against Cowboy, even though he lost that fight. But something like that, like an outside kickboxing game, nothing significant, just outpointing your opponent, which I can see him doing. Like, I can definitely see him doing that. But on the flip side, I look at the RDA fight, and Chandler has somewhat of a similar build, and he's got a little size on Henderson, and I can definitely see Chandler just marching in, throwing heat, and putting Henderson down. And Koreshkov didn't finish Henderson, but it's such a different style. He's more of, he ate the flying knees and the jump knees, but Chandler just has that Mike Tyson kind of power on the inside. And if Benson lets himself get backed up, I don't know. I don't think it's going to be good. I don't know. I'm so torn on this one. I'm always torn on Benson Henderson fights because they're just so hard to predict. I'll bet he's the favorite. Man, I'm going to pick Michael Chandler here. I originally picked Benson Henderson, but sitting here, I'm going to go ahead and pick Michael Chandler. I think he's going to get the first round finish. I think he's going to knock out Benson Henderson.
All right, Vic, you going to talk Eddie out of it?
You want me to talk this man off the ledge? Really? Is that what we're doing here? I don't know.
I'm asking the question. Are you talking?
Oh man, no. Look, I do have to. I have to agree with Eddie on some points here, and it's largely due to the fact that if RDA can find that chin and put Henderson down, I don't see how Chandler can't do something similar, or at least that. It's all going to be a matter of how he's able to cut off angles and contain Henderson to keep him up against, with working in a limited space against the cage, and then being able to find it. But Henderson's he's a very tricky guy. His movement, when he's not actually striking, his movement is very. He can be very sneaky. We've mentioned the whole bullshit thing before. He just has these things like, man, that's bullshit. He just threw those jabs or whatever and made it look like a big deal. He kind of shrugged off that punch, but he might just end up running out of options here. He wasn't able to take down Koreshkov. He wasn't able to get much going there, and the guy was considerably larger, so it's easier for us to understand that given the disparity in size. But in this situation against Chandler, I mean, the guy's just so good as a wrestler, both offensively and defensively. He hits like a truck. His timing is pretty good. I mean, what's he really going to do? Can he knock him out? Can Henderson knock out Chandler the way Will Brooks did? I don't see that happening. I mean, maybe it's possible, but I just don't really see it. I really don't see that much outside of some kind of flash jumping armbar type situation. I'm not sure how Chandler loses this fight. He's got this remarkable focus now. It's very different, as evidence in his last fight, how he's changed his approach to coming out the gate and just not really giving any ground to his opponent. I don't really see Benson Henderson getting away with any of his usual tactics, nor do I see this going to a decision. I could probably say that Michael Chandler's probably going to pound him out here, and we're probably going to see a finish sometime later on in the fight. So I got to go with Chandler on this.
A couple of interesting notes here. First of all, Chandler is the favorite. Chandler's coming in at minus 164 down to minus 190. And or up to minus 190 rather, and Henderson is at plus 153 to plus 140. It look or 138. No, 130. Tell a lie. All right, plus 130, and so yeah, not a huge favorite, but seem a solid line on Chandler there.
I'm a little surprised, honestly. I really thought Benson Henderson would be the favorite. I really did. And I got to say, the reason why I initially went with Benson Henderson is because of Chandler's knack for petering out in the second. And if he does that with Benson Henderson, he's going to get picked apart for 3, 4, and 5. I really see that happening.
That could be.
But I think he's going to clip him. I really think he's going to clip him.
So, a couple of things too to note. First of all, this might be the last time Ben Henderson ever fights, win or lose.
Really?
Ben Henderson has said that he will retire after his 33rd birthday, which is this month, and join the military. And he has been saying that since like 2012. And, this is as little as a year ago, as long as like 4 years ago. Ben Henderson's been talking about this is the end of the road. So if he keeps to that, who knows? Fighters rarely do. I haven't heard anything about it lately. But
It had to be the age of Jesus. It had to be. It had to be 33. He just had to go there. I mean, that's consistent at least, sort of.
All right. Well, the religious leanings aside, the second part of this too is that Chandler's Blackzilians now, which could mean very good things consistently for his striking. They, say what you want about their corner advice, say what you want about their wrestling or their grappling. They are producing strikers.
Except for Linton Vassell.
Except for Linton Vassell. Well,
I kid.
It's actually not a bad. I mean, look, it gives the added benefit. He's very good friends with his coach Neil Melanson, who's now with the Blackzilians, and it is a big boost to a lot of guys to have the people that they like and that they know and that they trust in their corner, guiding them along the way. So if you have that dynamic going, maybe he's in a better headspace. Maybe that's contributed to some of his recent success.
Yeah, I mean, it could be part of his confidence as to why he's doing better in the cage, and frankly. I think I've talked about this before, but I think that the cornering problems, namely Henry Hooft, really tend to impact guys who maybe either already have confidence issues or don't have a long history of secondary sporting success. Like dudes who don't have the history of like being the absolute. Like at a high level, at a high like pro or like collegiate level of being the best athlete already, because those guys, they tend to know that they're already the best. So somebody in the corner who's like, "Don't quit on me," they can be like, "I know I'm not going to quit." Like I know what I can do. I know what I can deliver. Whereas guys who haven't had that, you tell them not to quit, and suddenly they're like, "Am I quitting?" Shit.
Start second guessing themselves.
Yeah.
It's real.
I don't think that Chandler has that problem. Like, I don't worry about that with Chandler. Chandler doesn't seem like
either of these guys have that problem in this one.
No, I don't think that Chandler ever thinks twice about what he's doing in the cage. So, yeah, I got to lean Chandler too on this one. I think that just he's on a roll. Even the losses. It is a question to me of how much like Ben Henderson or how much like Will Brooks is Ben Henderson in this matchup. How many similarities are in the game that they play, and whether or not that can just kind of cause Chandler fits. But Chandler, those losses aside, Chandler's still been on a roll. Looks like he's absolutely a fighter in the prime of his career, and Benson Henderson does not. Benson Henderson looks like he's hitting that wall.
You also have to look at, in the Will Brooks fight, Chandler's game plan. Like, he was trying to take him down. Like, that's, I don't think he's going to do that here. He's going to try to put him to sleep.
Yeah, especially I think now, maybe especially after the Koreshkov loss, and maybe after some of the recent fights that Henderson has had, people are starting to get a better idea that Ben Henderson is not the most dangerous striker out there, and that they don't have a lot of reasons not to just try and march him down. And when that mystique starts to go, when guys start to see like, oh, I can just bully him, that can be a huge problem for some dudes. So I got to go with Chandler here as well. He's the favorite. On that note, any final thoughts?
We got a lot of fights.
Yeah, I got some final thoughts.
Okay, both of you guys. Eddie, go ahead. You start out. You're louder.
Okay. Like I said, I got an interview with Brandon Gertz on Bloody Elbow. Go check that out. If you can't watch live on Saturday, I will be doing a play-by-play on Bloody Elbow. And if you can't catch that, then I will have a results and highlights post ready to go for you fresh in the morning. So
All right, you're a godsend. Vic, what are your thoughts?
No, man, we got a lot of fights everywhere, major leagues, regional scenes. So just to expect a lot of content on Bloody Elbow. We got a lot of shit coming up, and a lot of it looks to be a hell of a lot of fun. We're gonna close out the year pretty grand.
All right, well, thank you guys for joining me. And if you're watching this video on YouTube, give it a like. That's a thumbs up down below. Subscribe to MMANation.com. It's DOTCOM. That's our YouTube channel. You can find me on Twitter at TheZaneSimon. You can find Eddie on Twitter at TheEddieMercado. You can find Vic on Twitter at Vic M. Rodriguez. Thanks everyone for tuning in, and we will see you next time. I'll be back. I'll be back tomorrow with a doubleheader vivisection for both UFC cards, and then potentially, I don't know yet, we might do an Invicta Vivi. We do not have that set in stone, but we will see.